Hi everyone, this is Matt Woodson. I'm the Assistant Director of Student Ministries, and that title is really appropriate right now because my hair is probably coming up close to being the same length as it was back whenever I was a high school student. I'm really looking forward to that very first haircut that I'm able to get whenever we're all able to get out again. But until then, I just wanted to share another story of Jesus and the disciples and how they all acted around him. This story is going to be found in John 12. It's going to be found in the first few verses of that chapter. Here's a quick recap of what's going on in that story. So Jesus and the disciples have come to dinner to Mary and Martha's house. This is the same Mary and Martha whose brother is Lazarus, and in the middle of the dinner, Mary takes this really expensive perfume and starts to pour it all over Jesus' feet. Judas, being Judas, starts chastising her, saying that she's being wasteful. But Jesus actually praises her and says that this is a really good thing that she was able to do, that this is an act of faith. So this past fall, Pastor Scott Sauls actually preached on this passage at the beginning of our 175th celebration back in November. In this sermon, he talked about how Mary was able to give so extravagantly. She laid aside her financial well-being and her dignity in order to celebrate Jesus and experience intimacy with him. Scott taught us that Jesus was so irresistible to Mary that she was able to perform this extravagant act on her best friend. Now, this was a great sermon, but in the middle of this, I had this nagging question in the back of my head. Would I be able to do the same thing that Mary did? Have you ever had that strange nagging feeling, that feeling of conviction, whenever you're listening to a sermon? Whenever you're trying to put yourself in the shoes of that person in the story, would you still act out in faith? I know how the gospel story ends. I know that Jesus pays for my sins, that he's resurrected from the dead. I also have the benefit of knowing that Jesus is the second person of the Trinity, that he's God incarnate. This is incredible. But you have to take this story in a context of where it is in the story. Mary didn't know these things at the time. Jesus was certainly a really special person, but she didn't fully know who she was worshiping at that time. So how was Mary able to live out her faith in such a bold way? This would be like the equivalent of giving Jesus a year's worth of your entire salary. And remember, this is in a time in history when economic stability was very rare. A lot of people, Mary herself maybe included, didn't know where their next meal was going to come from. Well, I think the reason why Mary was able to act so extravagantly in faith is going to be found in verses 9 through 11. Now, if you look at that part of the story, it tells us that a large crowd actually started gathering around that family's house, not only to see Jesus, but to see Lazarus. They had heard that Lazarus was raised from the dead, and that something quite incredible was going on in this household. Mary's bold act of faith wasn't arbitrary. She was able to give generously because Jesus had already given generously to her. Jesus works in the most intimate areas of our lives, the areas where we have experienced death and loss and disappointment. And here's the really important thing. He's always the one that acts first. He doesn't ask us to sacrifice in order for us to receive his good gifts. So here's a few quick thoughts about what this means for our everyday relationship with Jesus. Sometimes we are merry after Jesus has been raised. We all have stories of Jesus doing these miraculous things in our lives, giving us amazingly good gifts, showing up in unexpected ways. And those stories should be told, and we should celebrate them. Those stories should help us show our devotion to Jesus in acts of faith, and actually help other people engage in the story of Jesus, so that they might also experience those things. But there are other times where we are merry before Lazarus were raised. We lament the loss that we suffer. Mary didn't try to bribe Jesus to heal her brother. She just cried out to him. And when we experience lament, we're supposed to cry out. Sometimes crying out in prayer, and sometimes literally crying with our eyes. The Christian life is full of crying out and showing thanksgiving, often at the same time. So for some of us, we may be in the former part of that story, where we are just celebrating Jesus like crazy, and that's a really good thing. But some of us are probably lamenting pretty hard right now, and Jesus doesn't ask you to beat yourself up that you're not at the mountaintop. He just asks you to cry out to him so you can feel his experience. I pray that this week that you're able to feel both the joy to celebrate the amazing gifts of God and feel his presence in this time of lament. Captain wanted to say hi, so it looks like he's ready for me to end, and I'm about ready to end. So I hope you guys all have a great week, and that you are able to experience the good gifts that God has given you. Thanks a lot. Bye.